My brother and his wife just had another baby about, I don't know, it was last September, I believe. And usually when they're pregnant and my sister-in-law is pregnant, my brother will kind of put his ear to the womb and listen to the baby and talk to the baby. And just kind of talk to the baby, and just like when he usually talks to his other children, he makes a lot of funny noises. Only men do when there's a baby around. If they did that at work, they'd be made fun of, right? So babies can get guys to do strange things, and that's a good thing. But it's interesting is that, the scientists say, and a lot of people say that the baby will recognize that father's voice. After it's born, it recognizes that voice and knows the presence of their father. And so that kind of begs the question in light in the gospel, do we know the Father's voice? What voice do we typically hear throughout the week? Are we listening to the TV? Are we looking at the newspapers to see what they write? Are we listening to gossip? Are we listening to those scary noises out there? What are we listening to? Do we listen more to God and the church, or do we listen to the things of the world? Are we striving to become more worldly or more holy? So if we want to become holy, we have to listen to the right voice. It's kind of a game I actually made up one time when I was with some sixth graders. I was teaching a class, an RE class. We organized this desks into a maze. And then, it's kind of a loud thing, but you have one person who portrays God and giving them instructions to get through the maze, the labyrinth kind of a thing. And then you have the rest of the class is like shouting at them. And that's kind of like the way the world is. Everybody's shouting at this. Do this, do that, get the quick fix. Gossip, 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 doing this. Don't worry about that. Watch out for that. And all this fear-mongering and all these other things. The world is like a lot of hoopla, a lot of shouting. There's a lot of shouting. And so all the other kids in the class are shouting at this person, telling them to do things, the wrong things. And every time they bump into something, that's like a sin. They bump into something, so now they're blind. What it is, they're blindfolded. One person's like us, they're blindfolded. And God is kind of like, we're kind of leading our lives through, we're kind of blindfolded in the spiritual sense. We can't see the spiritual realities. So we're listening to all these voices to give us instruction in our life. And that one person is God, and we have to sort out through all the screaming and hollering at us. We got to listen to that voice of God. And so we have to train ourselves. You have to really concentrate to listen for that one voice that always leads you. And hopefully you don't pick out the wrong voice. So you got to think about that. And so what are we listening to? Are we listening to the magazines that tell us do everything you want? What voice are we listening to? In order to listen to that voice, sometimes we have to be in the quiet. We have to be in the quiet. That's adoration, the rosary. Our prayer life gives us the ability to listen to that quiet voice. Because when you listen to the Father's voice, what is the Father's voice like? Is the Father's voice like, woo, let's go out and party, woo? Is that the Father's voice? No, probably not. Oh, fear, fear, fear. Is that the Father's voice? No. What does the Father's voice sound like? That's what we have to figure out. And if you're going to try to go through all this stuff, we got to figure out what the Father's voice is. As we're listening to all these things. That's why we need to go to prayer. First thing we do is the Father's voice comes to the church. always reminding us of what is good, what is holy, what is right, helping others out, having that peace within. You see, through prayer we gain wisdom. And with wisdom, now we know what to do. We know how to follow him because we hear his voice. And so we need to have that silence. We follow him. We have that wisdom. We can listen to him. We can listen to his voice, listen to his instructions. If we don't have that ability to hear that instruction or listen to that instruction, we don't know God's ways. So to identify the voice of God, first of all, is through prayer and listening to the church. What does the church teach? We don't go off in our free thinking or our own ideologies, right? We listen to the voice of God. Sometimes what happens in our own lives, we go through our anxieties. Again, God is like trying to get us to listen to him, to hold his hand. And how do we hold his hand? Listening to him. And he whispers to us, here, do this, do that, come this way. Don't be afraid. I'm with you. I know you hear those voices outside, those scary voices, but I am with you. And I will protect you. I will guide you, but don't run. Don't run away from me. And God is always asking us to trust him. You know, so many times I see so many people who constantly make the wrong decisions. I don't know why. I don't know their life, their spiritual life. But sometimes I think it's because we get afraid. We get spooked. You know how a horse gets spooked and they just bolt. They just run. They'll run for a mile. Actually, there was one guy, a friend of mine, good friend of mine, he's living in Florida now. You wouldn't believe this. A horse ran into him. He got in a car accident and a horse ran into him. He was driving by, he was going to Zion, and he was on, I think it was 173, and they have horse stables, these big white fence horse stables. And for some reason, this horse got spooked and just ran. It just flew. It ran. And it ran all the way across the property, jumped over the fence, and he was at an intersection. He was about to make a left turn, and the horse ran into his truck at the intersection. Who would get in a car accident with a horse? But he got into one. What happened there? The horse got afraid and just ran. And it died. It had broken bones, and I think it might have had a broken neck, and it had at least broken legs, and they had to put that horse to sleep. Are we spiritually dead? Have we been spooked to where we just run, we flee into whatever the world, there's a lot of trappings in the world. The quick fixes, do this, do that. Oh, here, I'll take care of you, I'll take care of this. And they shove us into something that's a quick fix. And then not too far later, we find ourselves doing something that we had regretted. We didn't listen to the voice of God. We got afraid. And so we run. Sometimes maybe we're with God. Maybe it's kind of like that little baby who's so afraid and they start kicking and screaming. And then the parent comes and picks that baby up, but they're so afraid, and God is trying to tell them all the good things they need to hear, but they're so afraid they can't hear. And they're still kicking and screaming while they're piercing their parents' ears and kicking the stomach of their parent. Sometimes we do the same thing too. We get so afraid, we're kicking, and so we're so afraid, we kick against God. And he's trying to embrace us. He's trying to show us and tell us the many good things we need to hear, but we can't hear it because we're so panic-stricken. We just think we got to do something instead of simply listen. Just listen. Just listen to God, listen to his ways, and trust in his ways. And so this is the wonderful thing about this good shepherd and this good father that we have. Listen to him. How do we listen to him? Again, pray. When we pray and we enter into that silence, we can hear him. Part of being a sheep, the sheep that we are, means we have to have humility. We have to make ourselves small. To be able to listen to him, we have to be small enough. We have to be a child. Many of us in the ways of the world likes to say that, no, you have to know what you're going to do. And by golly, I'm going to tell you, everybody, I know everything. I can fix the world. And by God, you can listen to me. Do this, do that. Smack that person across the face. Do that. And, we think we know what we want to tell God what to do. But then we make ourselves on par with God. And then we make ourselves big. And if we're big, how can God embrace us like that? See, if we remain a child, what does a parent do to a child? Holds them, loves them, tells them the things that they need to hear. So when we become a child of God, God is able to be there to hold us, to embrace us, and to tell us what we need to hear. From that perspective, I'm a child. I want to be a child because I want to be a child of God. I want to hear those things that he wants to tell me. Those words of love, those words of consolation, where he makes it better, where he supports us and gives us the strength we need to carry on. This is our good shepherd. Do you know his voice? Do you know enough to listen to his voice and to follow him, to trust him in all things?